Well, having just arrived last night from Seattle, and given that it must be about 4 in the morning Seattle time, I'm going to have to sing and dance if it's going to bring the energy today. So I'm going to use this as a chance to get fired up here. Dean did remind me we're actually not at the London Business School, so if anybody needs to give birth, today is definitely the day. We're going to at least give birth here in the UK to a new product that we'll do the first demonstration for here in the UK at this series. It'll be kind of fun to have a chance to show you some of the new things that we have coming. I thought I'd spend a few minutes and talk a little bit about Microsoft, and in the context of Microsoft, talk a little bit about the IT industry and a little bit about leadership. And I hope in the very brief time I have, I can at least give you a few thoughts or provoke a few thoughts, and then we'll have a chance for good discussion. Microsoft, when it was founded basically on the principle that microprocessors represented a form of free intelligence, and if only, or almost free intelligence, and if only equipped with the right software, anything was possible. And in some senses, you could say that basic strategy, I'll call it a strategy, remains the company's strategy today. It's manifested itself in different ways at different times. We used to talk about our vision being a computer on every desk and in every home. That actually was a line Bill invented to keep me from quitting Microsoft. I dropped out of business school in 1980. Sorry, Dean. I had dropped out to move to Microsoft. I'd been in Microsoft about a month and a half, and I thought maybe I'd made a big mistake. And Bill took me out to dinner and said, Steve, you don't get it. We're going to put a computer on every desk and in every home. And while that may have been the vision, and that may have been, in a sense, the strategy for us in the first 15, 20 years, at the end of the day, the real strategy and guiding principle is software can do magical things when coupled with this amazing form of almost free intelligence. And to this day, what we would tell you is our core capability is that we are the most phenomenal software creation machine in the world, and we have tried to build the cultural adaptability to apply that in what appear to be very disparate forms. We start out, if you will, in the desktop with Windows, with Office. We've evolved to embrace the server and enterprise computing, mainframe replacement. We're moving to also participate in the world of the consumer with new devices, TVs, phones, the intelligence that they're getting, the world of advertising and media, the world of online computing. And yet at the end of the day, software is still a magic ingredient that contributes to all of that. So in this context today, we talk about empowering and enabling people and businesses throughout the world to realize their full potential. And in that context, I would say, the context of that core software-based strategy, there are a few things that are really important. We have to attract and retain the best and the brightest. There's absolutely no way to succeed as a software company, a company whose basic product is essentially intellectual property, unless we attract and retain the best and the brightest, and we create an environment that fosters the best innovation from those people. Innovation is such a loaded word. I'm sure it means something different to everybody. To me, it means the sum total of anything you might imagine. Is innovation that which can be done by 3 people in 3 months? Yes. Is innovation that which takes 1,000 people 2 years to invent? Yes. Is innovation that which comes kind of as a grand master plan from the top of a company? Yes. Is innovation that which comes from sort of the engineer a year or two right out of school on up? Yes, 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 yes. Are all new things innovative? No. Many new things are innovative. Some new things are just new. And so you have to learn to appreciate innovation, foster innovation. Innovation can sometimes be almost hard to contain. We did a fair in the old days of Microsoft. We called it the Best Practices Sharing Fair. And what we found after a few years is everybody wanted to create best practices and nobody wanted to use anybody else's best practices. So you have to, even in a world of great innovation, you have to also decide what is core to be able to reuse, the practices, the tools, the approaches, so that innovation's not always about recreating. It's really about enabling people to do the most important new things that are really going to change the world. So people and innovation. In the context of the IT industry, this is kind of a big idea. The software business, the IT business, but the software business specifically, our business, is being completely redefined today as we speak. For many years, software was something essentially you put on a disk and you hand to somebody. You hand to a guy who makes a computer, you could hand to an IT manager, you could hand through a Dixon store, for example, to a consumer. But in the new world, the world of the internet, we're actually seeing software become websites and websites and services become software. And in some senses, the fundamental definition of what we build and how it gets delivered and distributed is changing. Which kind of leads to kind of the second principle of our business, which is if somebody's going to reinvent what you do, it is better to be you than anybody else. In many businesses, I think you can go a whole lifetime without seeing your basic business get reinvented. That will never be true in the software and technology business. That creates additional risks, different challenges. We faced a challenge about 15 years ago, 12 years ago, I guess now, where people said, will Microsoft respond and get the internet? And we had to remake ourselves. We and everybody else whose core capability is software is learning to remake themselves for this world of software plus services integration. It's pretty fundamental. At the same time, as I said earlier, we're trying to be very broad in what we do. The average technology company may be very successful, but tends to do one thing very well. One thing. It's born with an idea. It gets that idea to be relevant, popular, profitable. But to actually find most technology companies then go embark on something that feels different. We started trying to be an enterprise and server company in about 1989, and for years we had enterprise customers tell us, you're not ready for the enterprise, you're not ready. And what they were really telling us is, go out there and build more capability. You don't have all the technology and products you need. You don't have all the service. You don't have the business model. You don't have the partnerships. And in some senses, it would have been easy to give up. We've certainly seen companies I have a lot of respect for. We may compete with them. But companies like IBM that I have a lot of respect for, they started in the consumer business, and they shut down their consumer activities and sold them out. Because it's very hard to build these second and third and fourth competencies. And yet today we're trying to build 4. 2 that we've now built and 2 new ones in advertising and online and in devices and entertainment. And that's kind of core to what we do. It's core to our strategy. Leading in our environment, and maybe leading in any environment, is then kind of tricky. Every leader has to decide, where do I add leverage? In our business, we have a combination of things that we're trying to do in which people get to operate very independently, and we have things that we're trying to do in which we're trying to gain great synergy. So what's the role of a leader? How do leaders lead? And certainly what I've found is there's sort of 5, 6 things which are very fundamental to at least the way I think I have to drive as a leader, and people in our company need to drive as leaders. Number 1 is people. People are everything. Unless we get the right people, and leaders have to make it a priority to get, attract, and retain the right people. That may or may not be as true in every other business as it is in ours. But you can't just say it's a corporate priority and not have leaders devote their time and effort to the cause. Leaders need to be adaptable. One of the things about our business is how dynamic it is. And yet the most obvious thing for most leaders to do is to invoke kind of the old principle. To a person with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And yet, not everything that we've done and learned and our leaders have learned in the past are equally applicable to our lives in the future. So adaptability. Focus on people, adaptability. Simplicity. The technology world is a world of great complexity. And in some senses, leaders in our industry often love to revel in the complexity. Let me just tell you how complicated this is. And sometimes the greatest value a leader can bring to the equation is how to reduce things to something that's simple enough that a decent size or very large organization can actually react to. Leaders deal with what I would call the yin and yang, at least leaders at Microsoft have to deal a lot with the yin and yang of business, things that appear contradictory but may not be. Accountability versus ambition. You can't say to an organization, we're all about accountability or we're all about ambition. If you say you're all about accountability, the best way to be accountable is to promise nothing and achieve nothing. If you say you're all about ambition, people will say, I'm going to the moon tomorrow. And when they didn't get there, they'll say, but I tried really hard. And there's sort of a tension there. And great leaders say, we believe in ambition and we believe in accountability. We believe in delegation, but I also am going to know your business well enough to be an intelligent participant in every discussion that we have. You need to balance or deal with the yin and yang of optimism. Look, I can't get up in front of our customers or our partners, our employees, unless I'm super optimistic about what we can do and what impact we can have and how our industry is going to change the world. And yet, if I'm not realistic, there are times when we have lower market share, our products are not everywhere I want them to be, we have innovations yet to come. So being able to balance optimism and realism is an incredibly important attribute, maybe of leaders in general, but certainly leaders in the context of Microsoft and our industry. The last thing I would say about leaders, I would say about Microsoft, and I would say about our industry, is the importance of a long-term approach. And I want to kind of end on this theme. It is ironic to me that most businesses and most business leaders take a very short-sighted view, even in the technology industry. There's sort of this misshapen notion that everything that is great happens quickly. And yet it is my experience and my belief, at least in our industry and maybe in many others, that about the only things that are really valuable to customers, valuable to shareholders, valuable in the broadest of senses, are things that you actually have to carefully craft and build and nurture for a number of years. I've made far more mistakes, and I've seen our competitors and partners make far more mistakes by canceling something too soon than by investing in something too early. And so we preach the importance of persistence, patience, long-term approach. Again, you have to be careful that it's not the enemy of accountability. I got asked by a journalist in the last few days, when will you give up on category foo? And I said, I'll never give up on category. The specifics aren't that important. I'll never give up. We may change the people, but we're going to continue to pursue because I think this is an area that will become important. Windows 1.0 was a failure. Windows 2.0 was a failure. Windows 3.0, thank goodness, we kept persistent for 5, 6, 7 years because our whole major growth and revenue opportunity depended on that long-term approach. With that is a little bit of kind of flavor for some of the things from a management, leadership, technology, and business perspective. We're going to show you something today that's going to take a long-term approach. It's a new product called Microsoft Surface. Mark Bolger from our Surface team is with me. He's going to do a short demonstration. As first demonstration we've done here in the UK. Come on stage, Mark, and we'll have a chance to show it to you, and I'm sure you'll understand why I'm done, why it's exciting, but why it might take a patient, long-term approach to achieve full critical mass. Please welcome Mark, and please welcome Surface.
Thanks, Steve. Well, Microsoft Surface is a great example of Microsoft innovation. It turns an ordinary tabletop into a vibrant interactive surface. The great thing about it is we can actually interact with digital content using our hands and objects in the real world versus having to use a mouse or a keyboard. Today, it's a 30-inch display diagonally, but tomorrow, it could take many form factors. We really expect surface computing to be pervasive in the future. Today, it allows for an individual or multiple people to interact with digital content at once in a way that's very natural, much like the real world. So essentially what it is it's a surface that's brought to life by Microsoft. We launched this category in May by announcing 4 partners, T-Mobile, Starwood, Harrah's, and International Game Technology, and all of those partners are going to use Surface in their environments to change the way that people interact with technology and to change their customer experiences. Because it is such a new category, we're going to take a phased approach to deployment, and it's now currently only available in the US, and we look forward to global opportunities. But you'll begin to see it later this year and early next. So, as I said, what I can do is, instead of having to use a mouse or a keyboard, I can just reach out and I can touch Surface with my hand. I don't have to use a keyboard, I can actually move it around. Go ahead, Steve, and join me. And so what this really demonstrates is that I have the ability to directly interact with a Surface computer, which is the first attribute. Secondly, I can touch it in multiple locations, so that's called multi-touch. And then we can do it together, Steve, and you can actually have multiple people at the same time. So
that's kind of like taking a bath with your brother.
Yeah, it's fun to tease people not to get their hand wet when they actually touch this. Another fun application, an application that can be used in a commercial environment, is photography. And we know that today, with the advent of digital photography, it's very easy to take photos, but it's oftentimes very difficult to share them. If we were at dinner and I wanted to share photos of my family with Steve, I could print them out, or I could bring my computer out and show them on a screen. But instead, what I can do is I can actually reach into my pocket and pull an object from the real world. In this case, it's a smart card, similar device, and I can actually put a domino tag on the back. I don't know if you can see this, but it's a tag that I can associate with content that's in the Vista computer underneath the Surface here. And so if I set this card onto Surface, that card is recognized as being mine, and it associates with a server and pulls down some photographs that I have stored in any one of a number of online services. I can actually launch this content, and it's as if I had printed photos, and I can share them with Steve. We can move them around. We can actually launch another stack, and we can enlarge them. Not only can we do this with photo content, but we can do it with video, so go ahead and press on play. And so you can see that we actually shot this in London, and it's video content that we can display at the same time that we're using photos. So you can actually have multiple sessions going on at once. Now, additionally, if we had been out in London and taking photographs throughout the day, what I could do is, Steve, if you don't mind, I'll take a photo of you. What a great chance.
Yeah, for something.
Yeah, that's right. So at the end of the day, we could walk into a coffee shop or into a hotel lobby, and instead of having to print the photos or to load them onto my computer, I could simply place this camera right down onto the Surface, and that photo is displayed. Isn't that great?
Looks good to me.
Now, if we love this photo so much that we wanted to print copies of it, we could actually do that, and we could turn it into a postcard, and we'd have lots of different opportunities to have stars placed around here. Career-limiting option here, I guess.
I like this.
So I can actually turn this over, and if we wanted to, we could write a message to a friend. And because we've associated with either our camera or our smart card, we could then bring up a list of email addresses, and we could send this to a friend, and it's sent automatically. So it's changing the way that we're interacting with digital content, making it much more social and collaborative. Another great example in a commercial environment would be dining. So we've all been out to dinner and have had the situation where it's difficult to get the attention of a waiter. Well, with Microsoft Surface, imagine this is your restaurant table, and what you could do is become the head waiter. You just reach out, touch the surface of your table, pull up a menu of beverages and browse through them with your hands, just using touch. And if there's something that I want, I can just drag that item up into an order queue, and that is placed there for me. And if I were to actually join and have a loyalty card, I could place that down on the surface, and it would remember that I've been here before, and I could actually take a look at the items that I've ordered in the past versus having to look through a menu. And if I happen to like Baja chicken and maybe a drink and a dessert, I can load that in. And when we're ready to go, because I have a Vista PC underneath, I can actually press order, and it's a simple matter to send that order to the kitchen. And when it arrives, I can use that same optical tagging system we talked about before, and say, for instance, we had ordered a glass of wine. I could place this glass on the surface, and it could bring up an image of the winery, perhaps the winemaker, even a full motion video talking about the wine, or maybe even suggesting some pairings for the food that we just ordered. And something that's really exciting from an advertising perspective is that we can actually change the paradigm with advertising and actually bring it to life, and where we can actually touch the advertising that's presented to us in a public environment. And you can see that this glass is very cold and it leaves a ring. That's a joke that not many people get. But then what we can do is actually move to another application. This one is a video puzzle. And again, what we can do is we can take the same tagging system that we have in the other examples, and I can embed them in an acrylic tile, and I can begin to place a video that's running in the background. You can't see it now, but if I place the tag down on, or the tile down on the system, it begins to take that video that we watched before and split it up into 12 parts, and it becomes a dual-sided moving video jigsaw puzzle that solves into a 4x3 format, and we won't try to solve it today, although I'm sure he could. There we go. And you can imagine that in a situation of a hotel or a restaurant or even in a home environment, you would be able to subscribe to a service, and you could have different puzzles served to surface on a daily basis.
I'm not very good.
But you can see that you can actually turn it over, and the image actually reverses as well. So if we have time, I can show an application from a commercial setting.
Let's be clear what we actually have here. What we have here is a Vista personal computer with how many cameras?
So we have 5 cameras underneath, and what they're doing is they're looking for user input in the form of hand gestures, touch, and physical objects. So that user input is then processed by the Vista PC, and there's a projector inside that displays the image back up onto the surface.
Our initial kind of partners and customers are primarily on the commercial side. You mentioned Harrah's. Harrah's will put this into a variety of gaming and hospitality environments, retail environments, very important for self-serve retail, dining, et cetera. You know, the goal over time, of course, is for us to drive the cost of this down so that people can have them in their home. Initially, this is a little expensive for the average US or UK home, but at least it gives us a basis of innovation. Will this require a long-term approach? Sure, it will. But with the advantages of technology and Moore's Law and cost reduction, there'll be a day during my working career when I think most families will say, yeah, we want to have a surface in our own home.
And we had a vision that Steve mentioned that we would have a computer on every desk. Now our vision 30 years out is that every desk can be a computer. And not only every desk, but every surface. Imagine walking into your home and seeing your countertop being a surface computer, or perhaps the mirror in your hallway. We'll have to work on gravity to work that out, but that's next. Here's an example of a T-Mobile application. I can actually set a phone down on the surface, and what that enables me to do in a retail environment, rather than having to struggle with understanding what this device can do, I can actually pull it off the wall, place it down, and it's much like I'm at home on the internet, and I can drill down into specific content. I can learn about the camera, I can learn about rate plans, and then what I might want to do is actually comparison shop. I'm in a retail environment. I can set a Sidekick down next to this phone, and I can enlarge it, and you can see that I can compare based on price and features and functions. And once I've decided, I can actually keep this phone, and the next process will be selecting.
You mean you want to keep the Windows mobile phone?
That's exactly right.
Good choice for today.
It's the only choice. So what I could do is I could drag rate plans up onto the surface, because I'll need to determine which one I want to add to my phone. And you can see that it's direct interaction, it's multi-touch. You could actually have members of your family here. It could be multi-user, and of course it's object recognition. And if I decided I want to keep this plan, I just load it into the phone, and it creates a virtual invoice for me on the fly. Additionally, what I could do is I could add content. If I wanted to have a ringtone for my phone, I could pull these up onto the surface and play the ringtone, and if I liked it, I could load it right into the phone, and it would again be added to my bill. I could also check coverage using something called a personal coverage check, and I could see how coverage is at work or at home. And then if all of that makes sense, and I want to buy this phone, what I can do is press confirm, and that order is sent using the Vista PC to the order entry system, and the phone is provisioned much like it is today. If I come back 6 months later to a different store and my rep isn't there, rather than having to explain what I have in this phone, I can just place it down on the surface and it recognizes me. And for instance, it could pull up the 5 people that I have in my calling plan. And if I wanted to add ringtones for each of those 5 people, rather than having to go through a long process online, I could do something in 20 seconds, which might take me 20 minutes online, and it's that simple. So you can see what we're doing, as Steve said, in the retail environment, is we're reinventing the customer experience. We're finding clear pain points that can be solved using technology, and we're changing the way that people interact with digital content.
Super.
All right, thanks,
Thanks,
Steve.
Mark. Yeah.
Well, that was very impressive. But let's leap straight into some questions. We don't have a lot of time, so forgive me if I cut you off in a few minutes. But who would like to ask the first question? Can I see some hands? And I'll also point. Who's going to ask the first question here? Sorry, when you ask a question, can you please state your name and your affiliation? Thank you.
Rob van Basten-Battenberg. I work for BT Group. I'm particularly interested in your vision on working on online applications and how to embed software online so that it can enable people's services in the home from everywhere. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Just elaborate, yeah. Well, the thing to think about is this. There basically are two, we like to joke, two kinds of things in the world. Things that are made of bits and things that are made of atoms. This table's made of atoms. And so in a sense, you might order it online, but the delivery, et cetera, its interaction is always physical. Software, what you want to be able to do is acquire it online, use it online, have its definition and capabilities grow with you and morph with you online. You want to be able to share it with your friends. Again, there's of course, licensing, business model, all that aside. You want to be able to share it with your friends. You want to be able to share what you create with your friends. And so as we talk about software plus services, we really are talking about this notion of a much more sort of dynamic product than static software or static bits. And we are talking about the evolution to a world essentially in which our product is always up to date, always evolving, and constantly kind of taking care of itself and updating itself, which is quite different than the world of today.
Thank you. And the next questions, please. Can I see some hands? Sir, at the back. Yeah, microphone at the back, please.
Sanmit Ahuja, Executive MBA 2004, currently for the Commonwealth. Question to you is that whilst we are seeing some fantastic products coming out that cater to the enterprise world or the consumers in the Western markets, but what is Microsoft and the industry doing to bring products to the bottom end of the pyramid, which are easily accessible and which do not fall in the CSR camp? So bringing products that are cheap to millions of people in Asia and Africa.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you have to rule out Europe and the US and other places. There are people, let me say, on the other side of the digital divide in many places. There just are more in some of the geographies that you mentioned. I think that in some senses, if you think about most economies, they probably have 3 bands from an innovation perspective. Affluent people in India, China, the US, and the UK basically all want about the same stuff. That's important to remember. I like to remind our people that as big as countries like China and India are, there's actually more people who are affluent in China than there are in most other countries in the world. The bottom of the, I'll come to the middle, the bottom of the economic pyramid in terms of acquisition of a capital good for information technology, it's likely to be a long time without government assistance before the poorest people in almost any country, but particularly in Africa and some of the other emerging markets. And so what we really need to do for that audience is make sure that we, to a degree, have computing available by the drop, to borrow from the kind of example from Unilever where they repackaged shampoo by the drop. The equivalent of shampoo by the drop in our business is essentially great shared use computing through things like internet cafes and kiosks. And we think there's a lot we can do to improve the experience of shared computing and to work with government and with private entrepreneurs to drive shared computing facilities, community centers, kiosks, cafes, etc. Perhaps the most interesting thing is what happens to the middle of the economic pyramid. Let's say, call that, I don't know, in China, let's call that the 200 millionth richest person to the 800 or 900 millionth richest person, just to give you kind of a sense. And that's a case where not only do we need to drive down the cost of hardware and software, but also we need to try to reinvent these devices so you get more devices that can serve more purposes. Why do people have to choose between a TV and a PC and a phone? If we could have one processor, one screen, one big screen, one little screen, one storage device that gets shared, we have a chance to innovate in a way that makes that whole kind of technology sphere more accessible, particularly for those middle of the economic people. So we are vigorously engaged investing in innovation around those scenarios. It is probably important to remind people that you can buy computers these days with Windows and Microsoft type software on it for $250. And these days, internet access costs well over $250 a year. So it is a combination of hardware, software, and internet service. The economic model for all of those needs to be reinvented for the middle of the economic pyramid.
I think we've got time for perhaps one and possibly two more questions. Any hands? Sir, there, yes. Thank you. And there's one more over there.
Mr. Ballmer, my name is Francis Mussenden. I'm President and CEO of the Bermuda Telephone Company, attending the Senior Executive Program. And I just wanted to ask you, you've been CEO for 5 years. What do you attribute mostly to your personal success?
What do I attribute most? I missed, I think. Yeah, gotcha. At the end of the day, I think the success our company has had has really been built on the two of the foundations I talked about, and therefore my success and everything else. We have hired well, and we've made that a priority, and we've stayed in things for the long term. When you couple that with the fact that betting on software as a business was a brilliant idea, we've had nothing but all the potential in the world. And I've had the good fortune of being able to be CEO during a period in which we've been able to sort of continue to push that phenomenon. Now, with that said, we got some things we're going to have to work hard on to continue to drive the curve, particularly as we try to break through in search and advertising, as we try to break through in mobile devices and TV. We have our work cut out for us. So, check. The numbers haven't looked bad the last 5 years. But if they're going to look good for the next 5 years, check, check. Better do a lot more of the things that got us here, so to speak.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. I saw it in the back there.
Hello, Bruce Weber. I'm on the faculty at London Business School. What do you think enables firms to get the maximum value, maximum business value from their IT investments? So kind of thinking about Microsoft customers, what do they do to convert your products and other IT products into the most business value for their companies? You
have a bit of a dichotomy, but people really need to do both of these things well. Number one, you actually have to have an IT staff that is technologically savvy enough to know and drive and be interested in and curious about new technology and effective in deploying technology at kind of the best cost and value. Number two, you need to have a technology staff that really knows a lot about your business and what you're trying to achieve. And I find that IT departments, instead of having both of those muscles be strong, most IT departments tend to run to one end or the other. So you get an IT staff that understands a lot about the business, but doesn't have the same technical depth or peripheral vision that others do. And you get some IT staffs that, they can talk tech with the strongest engineer anywhere, but lose sight of what their business is trying to achieve. And so it's a CEO who can appoint a CIO and give him sort of those twin directives, and the CIO, he or she can do that very well. I think that's sort of the key to optimizing business value for the enterprise.
Steve, I'm afraid I think we're running out of time on the questions here. What I'd like to do, if I could, is just pick up on just a couple of things that you've said today. First of all, you talked about reinvention and innovation. I think your words were powerful. The demonstration was absolutely clear, crystal clear. I think it's extraordinary. I look forward to seeing how this goes further. It's very, very exciting. The other thing I wanted to pick up on is both an answer to one of your questions and also actually in your talk. You said that you want to attract and retain the best and the brightest, and it's all about people. Well, I have to say, I think you are in the right place. If you want to attract the best and the brightest, they're right here. This group of young men and women who are students in our degree programs, those who are a little older on some of our executive programs, really are quite extraordinary. These people have come from all over the world. We've talked not just about the US and the UK today. This school is teaching people with faculty drawn from all over the world, with students drawn from all over the world. It's not very surprising that people other than me are saying this is the best business school outside the United States. And I'm not sure about that outside bit either. The thing that's particular about this place, and which is why I'm really pleased you're here today, and why we're glad for our relationship with Microsoft, is not only do we have absolutely world-class people, but they are from all over the world. They're not just one particular country with added foreigners. And they're here in London, increasingly the world's global capital. We think London Business School has a unique competitive advantage. We're delighted that you came here today. We look forward to renewing our partnership with you. We look forward to having you hire the best and the brightest and to be sending them back to our school further to be trained. And I'm quite sure there are going to be many people in this room who are going to be continuing to use Microsoft products. So thank you very much, Steve. Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Ballmer. Thanks, Dan.